During World War II, the film industry and cinema as a medium expanded rapidly all over Europe.
Governments, with different intentions for their countries, used film as a medium for propaganda, escapism, and reshaping of society at the time.
In this video, we will be comparing and contrasting the cinema of Germany and Britain. Why was the wartime cinema of Germany and Britain during World War II significant, and how are they different?
Considering the statistics which prove the fact that cinema films for entertainment purposes provided the best profit in the movie industry, these films with newly included elements of propaganda became increasingly visible in both Germany and Britain. Despite how both were aimed to contribute towards the betterment and the success of the country, morals reflected through the film were vastly different and contrasting. British films at the time presented a more realistic recreation of historical events behind the storyline, as they did not intentionally avoid every topic against the country that could result in the loss of support from the people. The film's release created a connection to the realistic conditions of the war, the people, and the experiences of actual events or details that are evoked through many aspects, which presented a much higher tolerance for other ideas in comparison to Germany. According to Roisman Copper Barbera, British films avoided censoring negative aspects of war and utilized these representations to their advantage. In many cases, the portrayal of harsh war conditions even became a motivation for people to enlist, due to the realization of the importance to unite during difficult situations. The Way Ahead, also known as The Immortal Battalion, is a British film with elements of real-life stories in the storyline. The protagonists consist of 7 vastly different men: a stoker from a parliament boiler room, a department store manager, a motor car salesman, a farmer, and a travel agent. Characters develop gradually into altruistic, heroic, and brave soldiers at the end, as they learn their life lessons taught by their superiors and by their own experiences. References made by Roisman Copper Barbera indicate the emotional appeal employed by British films during the time period that impacted the audiences emotionally and mentally. As presented in the speech that Ambler, Ustinov, and Niven delivered, many men were persuaded to join the army due to their sense of responsibility evoked by the speech and their honor towards the bravery of the retired soldiers. This also enhanced the reputation of the British Royal Navy as a result of the patriotic sacrifices the men devoted to. Carol Reed, the director, recognized the central theme as retired soldiers living at the Royal Hospital and reflected upon the memorable events of the war, which brought nostalgia into their hearts. They commented on how the youngsters in recent days don't have the stomach for it. The sense of nostalgia represented towards war misled the younger generation into believing that war was worth cherishing and was very valuable to participate in for a lifetime experience. The mentioning of retired soldiers towards the modern-day views of war encouraged young men to join the war as a result of shame and eagerness to earn approval. Contrastingly, German entertainment films focused their representations on happiness, eliminating every spark of negativity that appeared on screen. Happiness was represented in all aspects, including family relationships, marriage, women's attitudes in becoming a full-time housewife, and the battlefield, as men actively participated in war, and in the workspace where people were productive and work without any form of complaints. In consonance with von Pepe Manuela, negative feedback in German films were censored and never appeared on screen. There is a hidden influence appealing to its target audience, as no footage of war complaints were presented. This maintains positivity in the attitudes of people and women, which can especially benefit the workspace as it increases work efficiency and quality. German home-front films do not oftenly recreate information related to the realistic and harsh war conditions. However, when they appeared, they were portrayed as easily neglected and simply cured as a result of its insignificance, which was in opposition to the realistic and severe injuries at the time. The censored footage and simplified conditions of the war sightings creates an illusion to men that war is not as dangerous as they think. This encourages people to enlist in the army, as people will forget the suffering that war will bring them, and focus on the honor they will earn through their participation. Popular films in Germany mainly included hidden political messages that also noticeably revealed the socialist film culture in Western Germany. As reported by Soldoviervi Stefan, advertisements of socialist culture policies encouraged the audience to sense their national identity. However, in agreement with Horton Todd A. and Kurt Clausen, in the aftermath of Germany's war defeat in 1943, films were released, such as Stalingrad, Dogs Do You Want to Live Forever, and indicate feelings of anguish, guilt, and shame, which led to the suffering of many groups of people. Elements of self-reflection suggest the more accepting views of the German people towards criticism and a better sense of responsibility, which contrasts to the manipulative representations of perfection during the war.
In addition, the similarities and differences of England and German films were significant in their influences and presentations. For the cinema movies that included propaganda, one of the most obvious differences was their point of view on Nazis and Hitler. Germany, of course, favored pro-Nazis and anti-Semitic movies. On the other hand, England's cinema movies that included propagandic elements were all anti-Hitler. For Germany, other than the promotion of the Nazi ideology, they also produced many movies in favor of socialism. According to Simon Haig, a professor and Texas chair of German literature and culture in the Department of Germanic Studies at the University of Texas, there was a constant stress upon and fostering of the film industry as a national industry and its production as a national product, resulting in the stimulation of the use of films as the political tools in both Germany and England.
Grimshaw Street. Grimshaw Street. Now, wait a minute. I know it as well as can be, and I can't just place it.
Oh, come along. It's only just down there.
No. Don't tell me. Let me think of it for myself. Grimshaw. Oh, isn't that annoying? I could walk straight to it, and I can't think of it.
It's next to Whiteley Street.
Next to Whiteley Street. Oh, I know it as well as can be. Grimshaw. What's the number, lady? What number is it?
78.
78. Turned out nice again today, hasn't it?
Another purpose of the cinema was that both England and Germany utilized the movies to make profit which support the war. Research has shown that between the 1930s and 1940s, many national cinemas in Germany were forming economical competitions, proving its potential of growing the national cinema industry. Based on research of Simon Haig, annual ticket sales shot from 624 million in 1939 to 1.1 billion in 1943. In the early 1940s, only the United States had more exhibition venues than Nazi Germany, which had nearly 8,600 cinemas in Germany and the occupied countries and territories. From England's perspectives, according to Mark Clancy and Mary Queen's research, cinema admissions figures of 1940 actually rose to just over 1 billion for the year, and they continued rising steeply for the next few years, researching over 1.5 million in 1943, 1944, and 1945. Additionally, a special purpose of cinema in Germany was comfort, as it was very much needed for the citizens in the aftermath of Germany's defeat in the Second World War. For example, the movie Aftergone of 1944 reinvigorated the colonial fantasy in a way that also enabled it to obliterate and forget the failures of Nazi Germany. Last but not least, the most important job for the movies was to entertain the people. In both England and Germany, most of the popular genres of films were pure entertainment. In England, many people went to the cinema simply to stay warm and see friends, because they did not like the pubs for being away from their family or fellow lodgers in crowded accommodation, or if they were away from home, to find comfort in a familiar form of entertainment. This also contributed to the popular concept in films, escapism. Due to the chaos of wartime, even the people on the home front have been frightened and psychologically affected by the war. Comedy movies provided people a chance to relax and enjoy.
During the wartime period, most of the population left behind were women, as most of the men were drafted. The British people especially enjoyed going to the cinemas for entertainment and distraction from wartime depression. Film genres and contents made during wartime catered to the female audience accordingly. There suddenly was an abundance of melodramas, romance, comedy, and Germany's Heimatfilme, which is a genre popular for its setting of rural life and escapism. Escapism was also an important factor during the wartime. Both the British and German governments seized the opportunity to reshape the female role and encouraged them to fill in to help the war effort. Female characters portrayed in wartime cinema gained more independence and positions in their society. They are shown helping from the home front by working jobs usually occupied by men and stepping out of their usual positions to help their country. In a 1942 British film, Went the Day Well, women were seen using firearms for the first time. At the time, women were not allowed to handle firearms unless an invasion occurred. The scenes explored the possibilities for women to change the gender distribution of roles, as women were never shown in armed combat at the time. According to Dr. Manuela von Papen, German films were used to promote the ideological perfect society. Women of pure German blood were motivated to step out of the normal zone of women's roles, participating in achieving the nation's interests. Women were also seen as extremely important to the Nazi regime for the purpose of continuing the bloodline and protecting the longevity of the pure German race, which is a very fancy way of telling them to have as many babies as possible. The Nazi regime had a lot to do with the shifted role of its women in society. Unlike Britain, the shift was not an encouragement to help their country by filling in for the temporarily missing men in the society. The Nazi ideal and eternal values were displayed through a strong sense of nationalism, shown everywhere and in every medium. The heroines of Nazi cinematography are often role models that reflect the ideals of the regime. Women are shown in traditionally feminine occupations: housewives, mothers, and child takers. Their primary prioritization was also finding a good man to marry, who is generally a soldier that has achieved success in the army, like shown in the film Heimat. This connotated popularity of soldiers towards men, in keeping with Dr. Manuela von Papen, persuaded the male audience to enlist in the army. As a result, the lack of individuality and passiveness of women evoked through a collection of German films influences women to follow traditional values portrayed and to concentrate on sacrificing more for the family, therefore reducing the hesitations of men not joining the army. However, very few heroines are only active in their homes. Most move beyond their traditional tropes with ease and take part in the national economy and other communal activities for the betterment of the community. Antagonistic characters are shown trying to bring unwanted change into the community, objecting or mocking these ideals. They try to escape and lead their own lives, but always fail bitterly. They ultimately accept the society they tried to run from. Imagine your parents forcing you to marry the man that was a clear red flag for his reputation of being a playboy, and when you refuse, they threaten to shoot you with a pistol, like in Heimat. Speaking of antagonistic characters in Heimat filme, they are a product of films made during the Nazi regime, which often convey their ideas in a very straightforward fashion. Role model characters often followed what was called the 3 Ks: Kinder, Küche, Kirche, which stood for Children, Kitchen, Church. This was a public concept at the time that summarized a German woman's roles. It expanded to incorporate a 4th and 5th K, Kujgebergen, which stood for party rallies, and Kriegsarbeit, which meant war work. I am sorry for butchering these, I don't take German. The antagonistic characters stray from these Ks and have to be made fit, quote-unquote, to be included in the community, or be punished for their refusal to live by the rules. For instance, the main character of the film Heimat, Homeland, who is a German opera singer returning from her career in America, returns with her own opinions and a free spirit to her hometown, which she felt was a stifling and narrow-minded environment. The film, like many others of this genre, illustrates how a disobedient individual is re-educated before she can be accepted back into society. The young woman is crushed into submission by her family and community. The British motivated their audience by a sense of patriotism, self-sacrifice, and an awareness of their place in the hierarchy, harnessing their status for the national job. Mobilization is almost required by the government in forms of propaganda and messages. They told them to get out of their comfort of the home front, which to be honest isn't all that safe anymore during World War II due to total warfare. Role model filmic characters compared to popular tropes of German films have more personality and character. But now, with their contribution to the war effort, either by law or by circumstance, taking on work that had formerly been carried out by men, the traditional female role was greatly challenged. However, De Cacqueret also pointed out the great fear among the community, considering the longevity of this change. These changes caused much doubt and fear within the public sphere, and were sometimes seen as a threat to men and their civilian employment. Considering the fact that it is during wartime where circumstances are different and abnormal, there is great stress and fear of this being a temporary step forward only. Let's move on to some actress examples now. Zara Lander was one of the most popular, if not the most popular actress of Nazi Germany at the time. She was an actress and singer, received one of the highest wages paid in her film company UFA, and most of the films she starred in were the most popular films to be produced at the time. According to director Ferdinand Bayer, she did not only find the right expression with her unhappily languishing gaze and the cloudy voice, she also ennobled it. She is essentially a personality, sort of like internet celebrities today. Her personality is almost artificial, as the films and advertisements purposely promote her as this National Socialist, the star of the Third Reich, and the Nazi cinema's new women. But in biographies and interviews, she's very much apolitical. She functioned as a character that goes against the Nazi ideals. Those characteristics were portrayed as negative, but for the audience, it became an alternate view of the expectations of the time. Actress Margaret Rutherford's career flourished as she aged. Her roles articulated a nostalgic vision of Englishness during a period of upheaval and change. She had a distinct acting style and persona that made her stand out, and capitalized on her age and physical presence as a comedy grotesque. She mostly took on comedic roles, but ultimately flourished as she represented a familiar feeling and image that was pre-war and maternal. She entered the industry later. She was 44 when she debuted in 1936. Her role as an older woman challenged the stereotypical view of women in the industry, which centered on sexuality and attractiveness.
Lastly, let's have a look at some influential film works made during World War II. A movie was released in 1944 called Emanuel Maximilian. This was a German comedy movie set during 1945, which was the end of the war. It was one of the last films released during the Third Reich and was played in the cinemas during the Battle of Berlin. This was an example of comedy movies relaxing the soldiers and citizens after stressful wartime events.
Morgen, Josefa.
Loli, Post ist doch. Ja, haben Sie sich aber heute abschleppen müssen? Ist ja sein Beruf. Was glaubt der Mooshuber, was ich anschleppen muss den ganzen Tag?
Heute weiß man wenigstens warum. Lauter Pakete und Glückwünsche für die Herrschaft zur Sübenen.
Another very popular movie in 1944 was Family Buchhaus. This was also a German family comedy film. It was based on an 1884 novel by Julian Stende. One of the most popular German cinema films might be The Desire for Mabula. This film was produced and released in Germany during the last year of World War II and has been called a masterpiece of timeless, cheerful escapism.
Nun, meine Herren, sollen Sie auch den Anlass erfahren. Heute Nachmittag habe ich unseren lieben alten Pavian begraben. Bitte nicht zu lächeln.
For England, one example was the film Night Train to Munich. This was a 1940 film based on the 1939 short story Reports on a Fugitive by Gordon Wesley. The film was about an inventor and her daughter who were kidnapped by the Gestapo after the Nazis marched into Prague in the prelude to the Second World War. A British Secret Service agent followed them, disguised as a senior German army officer pretending to woo the daughter over the Nazi cause. Another example was Henry V. It was released in 1944 and it was based on Shakespeare's play. This was also a pure entertainment movie.
comes to a close, the film industry opens to a new age of cinema as they face a different society.
As both Germany and Britain profited off consumers deprived of relaxation, economics bloomed. Britain encouraged women to become more independent, giving hope of more gender equalities in the future.
However, the changes and innovations made during the wartime as well as the societal changes that came with the unique circumstances were undeniably significant. The economic benefits, propaganda messages, and the reshaping of society greatly influenced the history of film and gave momentum for a new generation of people.